I discovered the importance of copy when I wrote my first book, Fit Over 40, when this thing sold and shut down, and we hit 1017 on Alexa, if you can believe that. Alexa may not even be around anymore, but it used to be, maybe it is, but it's the site where you can go and see what the most popular websites in the world are. And we went from total unheard of, never before, and in 3 days we were 1017 on Alexa. So I can't imagine being the 1017th most popular website in the world. So that was 100% email copy, 100% sales copy. It had nothing to do with my name at all, because no one knew me from Adam. Yeah, so that to me woke me up to, wow, if you can do this with just words on a page and words in an inbox, what can you do to impact the lives of millions of people? What can you do to change the world for the better? Because let's face it, the world doesn't need to be changed for the worse right now. It needs to be changed for the better. And how powerful can that be? And the second wake-up call for that was when I tried to write my own sales letter. So when I said to myself, I didn't read any books on it. I was like, look, I had this weird train of thought. I'm a musician. I'm a trained musician. I've got 2 degrees in music, and I played professionally, and I never hit the goals I wanted to hit musically, ever. I mean, I achieved a certain level of being able to play, and yes, I'm a good player, but I never achieved greatness. I never achieved, like, I was never, I toured with some bands and had some fun and all that, but I never got signed to a major label and all that stuff. So I know I had this reason why, and the reason why was I am constantly taking one course after another. I'm constantly going to school. I'm constantly practicing. I'm practicing 14 hours a day. That wasn't getting it done, because I was too afraid to go out in the real world. That's really what it was. I was like, to go in the bars and clubs and jazz clubs and just play. Get your chops waxed, man, get humiliated at times. And I wanted to have the comfort of the practice room. I've never been a cowardly person, but in this case, it was a cowardly thing, I think, more from my position. But so this time I swore I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't dive down the rabbit hole of learning from every great copywriter in the world. I said, I'm just gonna go on an intuition, read my own sales letter that Tom wrote, and I'm gonna because hey, I wrote a book. I was one of the poets of the year 2006, so I can write. Why not? I can write sales copy. I mean, come on, this stuff is pretty schmaltzy, And turns to find out that wasn't true at all. My first sales letter completely bombed and got like 0.6% conversions, and that was another wake-up call to, well, this is a skill that takes some time, takes some practice, takes some mentorship to do. But I still decided in this particular case, and it's not advice I'm passing on to anyone else, because believe you me, this could have failed miserably, but I decided to just not read anyone else, to not study any of the copywriters. I was like, I'm gonna figure this out on my own, and I'm gonna keep playing around with it. And I had the time, because we had the income from the book, and I had the space to do that. Normally, I would never recommend it, but so that's what I did, and in that process ended up creating the first video sales letter. And until then, my copywriting completely sucked. And even 4 years after that, I'm going around lecturing to copywriters. And I start off by saying, hey guys, I'm not a copywriter. Just so you know, I'm a fitness dude that wrote a fitness book and happened to create a video sales letter. So I'm doing this real modest, all shucks, I'm not a copywriter thing, until one of the days I'm talking in front of John Carlton and Gary Benzavinga and David Schwartz. I go down the line of who was in that room that day, and some of the best copywriters in the world. Craig Clemens, I think. I don't remember if Craig was there or not, but a lot of the Agora guys were there. Mike Palmer was there. And I'm like saying, guys, I'm not a copywriter. Guys, I'm not a copywriter. And then I go through this 6-hour lecture on how to write video sales letters. And Carlton came up to me and said, I swear, if you say that again, I will kill you. I will beat you up right here on the spot. Not that he could, but he said, I will probably die trying, but I will try to kick your ass right here on the spot. You've got to stop saying that. You are a copywriter. And by the way, here, I'm your new best friend, and here's my phone number. And I couldn't believe, like, the one guy that I knew whose name, John Carlton, I knew him. I knew that guy because he was super famous, and he taught my partner, Tom Venuto, how to write copy. So I thought at that point you've pretty much arrived and people think you're a copywriter if he's telling you that. So I started labeling myself as a copywriter from that point on. But that was that was the wake-up call to how powerful words are, and then what it took to become good at them, because for years I never thought I was. copywriting in its most innocent form is the ability to persuade someone to take action with words. Pretty simple. But in a more sophisticated definition, copywriting is the ability to evoke the emotional and mental states necessary to elicit immediate change. So that is powerful. Now, that's not something I've memorized. That's just something, that's how I would describe it. Maybe there's a more eloquent way to describe it. But for me, when I write, I am thinking, how do I use the words and the rhythm? There's a rhythm to copy. The musicians all get this. Kevin Rogers, myself, Jon. There's a rhythm to copy that's there. And how do I write this in a way that can not only emotionally and logically connect with my prospect to the point to where they take action, measurable action, that very day, and gets them out of pain, gets them out of the pain that they're in, but also connect with them from a state of reason. In other words, how can I use copy to, how do I use words rather, to make a logical argument stick that doesn't sound like I'm speaking in syllogisms and rhetoric. So that is the art of copywriting. And so copywriting is also mired in storytelling. So like I can tell you something, or I can show you with words. So copywriting is the ability to show somebody with words, and even better than that, to allow them to see it themselves. So in other words, you're not the one showing it to them, they're seeing it in their own mind. So their mind is infinitely more powerful than your words will ever be. So you have the neat skill, if you're a copywriter and you've been trained and you're good at this stuff, to allow someone to see in their own mind something that you can never possibly convey. But you can trigger the words that can trigger that to happen in them. So that is the longer definition of what copywriting is, and certainly more accurate to what we want to be as copywriters. Psychology was my minor, and I studied NLP in college. It was really fascinating to me from a psychological point of view, like how does the mind process information, and how do you phrase things in a way that allows you to get through the noise in someone's mind. We all have a lot of noise going on up here, a lot of noise, especially today. It's mostly noise for most people because they're inundated with everything from a million emails a day to what's the latest thing on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. So how do you cut through that? How do you slice through that and get right to the heart of the matter? So I wanted to study NLP and psychology and even a little bit of hypnosis to find out how people are doing this with words. And so I still approach copywriting to this very day as kind of the art of blending psychology with emotional leveraging in states like that, leveraging emotional states, tapping into everything from the amygdala of the brain to the prefrontal cortex of the brain, speaking to both sides of what I call the buying brain. There's like two sides to the human being, right? There's the logical and emotional side. All that stuff is obviously psychology. So that part of it is super critical. I know there are copywriters that say, no, just make a really great case, because if you can prove something, you don't need anything else. That to me isn't true. And not only that isn't true, it's not interesting. Even if it was true, I'd probably still write the way I write, because it's like part of it is the ability to engage somebody into to a vision of life that they don't have. So you can't do that when you're just spewing facts. You have to show somebody using words what's possible, guide their mind through that process, and allow them to give themselves permission to see it. So that's a huge part of copywriting that very few people talk about, is how do you give your viewer, your reader, your prospect, however you want to describe them, permission, verbal permission, psychological permission to see themselves completely differently. Because believe me, most people don't. They don't feel like they should. They don't feel like that's permitted. And obviously that's not on a conscious level, that's on a very subconscious level. They do not have the worth, from whatever reason, in relation to what you're talking about, to process seeing their lives any better than it is. So you as a copywriter, if you're not able to do that, you're not able to make the sale, you're not able to change the life, it's just never going to happen. I can use what I teach you here what I can share is the rudimentary framework for what I call the now method, and now has a framework. Frameworks are like lattices for houses, right? So it's a lattice work for, you see a building and you see the lattice work go up. That's the framework. It's the foundation and the metal structures that hold things up. Everything else goes around that. So the frameworks that I use in psychology, there's 3 of them. And the acronym is NOW, N-O-W, right? And so it stands for notice, one, want. That's what that stands for. So it's kind of a command to notice that there's one want that your user has, or your prospect has, but it's more than that. This stands for things inside of things. So the ability to, for example, to notice. Your prospect, your buyer, your reader, your fan, however you want to look at that person, desires to be noticed in some way. Now, so they may be the shyest person on the planet, a complete and absolute introvert. I'm very introverted, but everyone has a desire to be noticed in some way. In this conversation that we're having about the topic that I would be presenting, they want to be noticed by their friends, their partner, their society, the society as a whole, whatever it may be, to be someone who can cook, to be someone who can train a dog, just to be somebody who can lose weight, whatever it may be. So how do you speak to that desire to be noticed? Okay, that's super important psychologically. So think about it from how do I not only speak to it, but give them permission to say it's okay. It's perfectly okay to want to do X, Y, and Z. In fact, it's healthy. And I'm going to show you how to do it today. And just give them permission to be okay with it. So that's the first psychological principle. The second one is the one thing. There's really not another reason that I can think of other than failure to make somebody try to believe more than one thing at a time in copy. One big idea, one big thing, one driving problem, one driving solution, whatever it may be. I use terms like primary cause, primary solution. Those are my definitions of those words. Big idea is another way of saying it. Unique mechanism is another way of saying it. The big thing, the one problem, it's got to be the focus of your copy. It can't be 5 problems that you're having. Distill those 5 problems down into one. Now, can I say that copy like that will never work? No, because it's like that would, things can work if you let them, right? But I'm saying that it's much easier on your prospect's mind to say, look, there's only one reason you haven't succeeded at internet marketing. There's only one reason you haven't succeeded at copywriting. There's one real reason. It comes down to one thing, and here's what it is. Yeah, everyone's sitting there waiting for me to tell you what it is. But if I said there were 15 things, or 5 things that you may be sort of tuning out by level 2, number 2, number 3, right? If I say there's just one thing, there's no place to tune out to. You either are interested or you're not. So one thing can capture the attention psychologically much better than dozens of things. And I'm not saying there's not room for a top 10 list of things, but when you're writing a sales letter and when you're trying to convey a message, it should be one big idea. And the third thing is the wants, is to understand the difference between wants and needs. So psychologically speaking, a need is something like I need to lose weight. I need to improve my marriage. The wants is what sells the need. The wants are things like, well, why do I need to lose weight? Well, I want to look good. I want to feel better. I want to fit back into my high school jeans. I want to look good in that bikini, right? Well, not me. I wouldn't look good in a bikini, but I want to look good in that swimsuit, right? So those are the wants. And so the wants are what sell the needs. So psychologically, you must speak to the wants before you speak to the needs. But ethically and morally, in my opinion, it's always best to speak to the need underneath it all. So if I was to say, look, everyone wants to feel like they did back when they were a teenager, have the energy that they had when they were a teenager. Everyone wants to look more attractive to their mate. They want to feel, maybe you want to have a more slender waistline, and maybe you want to get rid of that stubborn fat. And that all comes down to one thing. You have to get control of your metabolism. So I just did 2 things in that, talking about the notice one want. I just did all 3 of it in that one little example, right? So I'm talking about the things that somebody wants, but what do they need to do? But if I start with the need to control your metabolism, it's nowhere near as engaging as I'm stacking all those wants on top of it. So now somebody is going to actually take that need into a want. You can turn the need of getting control of your metabolism into a desire. It becomes a new desire in someone's mind that they didn't have before. So one of the most important aspects of a video sales letter is an open loop. Now, an open loop is where you start an idea and you finish the idea later on. So if I say to you, for example, Look, the other night, my girlfriend and I were out at this club, and you will not believe what happened to us. It's just the weirdest thing. I'll tell you about it in just a second. First, then I go into something completely different, right? So that's an open loop. I've just opened a loop. And now, if somebody's interested in hearing a quirky personal story with my girlfriend and I, then they might stick around to hear that. So it's an engagement technique that's used by copywriters to hyper engage somebody, to have them stick around longer than they normally would. So open loops became very popular with video sales letters when I started them, because my first few video sales letters had these wild open loops. Like my first video sales letter started with, hey, my name is John, and this here is a picture of my magic jacket. And this jacket helped me lose 68 pounds of ugly body fat. I'm going to tell you exactly how it works in a moment first. So now, what I did right there is just open a loop. And at this point, people are thinking, is this some sort of weighted jacket? It doesn't look like it because it was leather. Well, the jacket was just part of a story that I told, a very critical part of a story of my lowest point in my obesity journey. And I was wearing this jacket that was so huge on me because I had this like triple extra large jacket, and even then it was starting to get tight because I kept buying bigger and bigger jackets. But it was big enough for me to be able to steal donuts. And I was stealing donuts at 2 a.m. in a convenience store because I left my wallet at my office. I was that addicted to sugar. So I used this jacket was a symbol. It was a reminder of how low I'd sunk. And despite going back the next day and paying for them, I still felt like a total idiot and completely out of control, hopelessly addicted to sugar at the time. And so it became like this magical thing for me. This jacket became something I would look at in my closet every single day as I started, getting back in shape and losing the weight and figuring out what to do. So that's an example of an open loop. So very important to be able to do this in general. Now, you don't have to use some sort of crazy pattern interrupt like I just used. So I used a pattern interrupt and an open loop at the same time. The magic jacket is a pattern interrupt. So a pattern interrupt is something that scratches the surface of the brain, if you will, and interrupts your pattern. So that's an NLP term. All it means is that I'm going to take you out of a state that you're in right now and get you in another state. Like if I could walk up to somebody and just go, snap, do that right into their face, it's going to snap them out of whatever they're talking about, right? You could be in a room of 5 people or a group of 5 people, and you come up to them and you snap your fingers right in the middle of the conversation. They're just going to stop and look at you like you're from another planet, right? That's a pattern interrupt. Well, how do you do it with words? Well, I did it with what I first told you. This is John, and this is my magic jacket. So you're coming to a weight loss site, and I'm talking about a magical jacket. That is a pattern interrupt. I've shifted your pattern out of what you're expecting to hear into something completely different, and I did it with an open loop. I'll tell you about it in a moment, but first let me tell you more about this. So those two techniques work very, very well together. They work great in email, by the way. You could start an email with a subject line that says, yesterday I made $18,462. See how I did it. And that's the subject line. Okay, so that's probably going to get a lot of clicks if you are in internet marketing or if you do BizOp or whatever. And you repeat it. If you open this, you want to know how I made $18,000 whatever dollars yesterday. I'm going to tell you about it in just a second. First, I need to tell you something super important. Well, I just opened a loop, right? But if you think about it, that $18,472 is kind of another version of a pattern interrupt, because it's something that stops you in your tracks. It's just not as much of a pattern interrupt as, say, the magic jacket or what's called a non sequitur interrupt, where I say, my friend Josh wrote the famous goldfish VSL for dating. He said, hey, my name is Josh, and this is a fish. He shows a picture of a goldfish. He goes, in a few minutes, this fish is going to teach you how to get laid. So that doesn't make any sense. That's a non sequitur pattern interrupt, but it captures the attention and breaks through the ice a little bit, makes somebody giggle, like what the hell is he talking about? Gets the interest going, right? But you could use logical interrupts, like you could say the top 3 reasons why people fail at blank. Well, that's more of a logical interrupt. You could use what I use with the shocking interrupt. I made $18,000 yesterday. See how I did it. These are ways to get people out of a framework out of a frame of mind rather, and into a different state. There are just different ways of doing it. And so pattern interrupts that are super successful, that people remember, are the wild ones, the non sequiturs, the ones that do the magic jackets and the goldfish and all that stuff. But there's all sorts of different ways to do this. But you need to understand the principle, even if you don't understand the tactics and how to do it. You need to be able to scratch through the surface noise. You got to be able to do that. Your words, your message has to cut through the clutter. If it doesn't, it's lost in the inbox forever. It will never be open. It's lost it's a click to a website that will never be read. That's the worst thing in the world for you and your product and your future, is to have that happen. So you have to know how to cut through and grab the attention of your prospect. You can do that with techniques like pattern interrupts and open loops.